good music we got there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
In that one.
I
All
love
right.
that beat.
Well, as you guys know, we have a lot of backup running backs that are in starting roles for multiple reasons this week. Who are the top 3 that you are confident in starting in round 1 of the fantasy football playoffs? Victoria, go ahead and start us off here. Who's a backup running back that you are confident plugging into your lineup this week?
Goodness, the running back landscape has been putrid over the last month or two, right? Let's start with the obvious. I guess we should go with most trustworthy to me, Sony Michel, of course, if he has to fill in for Darrell Henderson again this week. Deonta Foreman I like against Pittsburgh, and then I'd probably say Javonte Williams as a backup. If that's not a good answer, then I guess A.J. Dillon as well. But Sony first that comes to mind, of course, if Darrell can't go. Again, I know he had a down week this past week, but the week prior to that filling in, he had over 20 carries, 121 yards, and a touchdown. That game script from last week was the Rams just kept passing on the Cardinals. They didn't have many goal line carries for Sony, but he's usually pretty bankable and having a touchdown. And Dave, you and I were talking earlier about playing Javonte this week, even with Gordon still playing. I'm still playing Javonte. And then Deonta Foreman, I like. Steelers matchup is juicy, even with Hilliard there. Even Hilliard has a dart throw, too, if you're in a really big pinch. Steelers defense giving up, I think it's the second most points to running backs since week 9, only behind the Jets, which is unreal, about 32 points per game.
And I don't even know if you can call Foreman a backup at this point. I mean, at this point, I think he is the lead back there. And then 2 of the other names, like the first ones that popped into my head were A.J. Dillon and Javonte Williams. And then I started thinking, are these guys even backups? Because at this point, they're almost in 50-50 timeshares. I mean, last week, I was just reading, A.J. Dillon saw 5 red zone carries to Aaron Jones's 1. So, I mean, Aaron Jones, he's a guy that if you drafted in the first round, you aren't feeling too good about because A.J. Dillon is really just, I don't want to say taking over, but definitely carving out a big piece of the pie for himself. But Chris, same question to you. Who are some backup running backs that you'd be confident starting in week 15?
I mean, I think y'all hit on all of them, to be quite honest. I don't think there's no more meat on the bone when it comes to picking up running backs like at this point in the season. I mean, if you haven't been able to pick up guys like Rashad Penny, I mean, I know Javonte Williams has been long gone. But I mean, a couple of folks that I've seen that, and I know it sounds gross, and at this point in the season, you're probably making a couple of gross plays, especially with injuries and the number of COVID situations that we're probably are already that we already know about and ones that we're probably going to wind up talking about over the next few weeks. But I mean, so this Craig Reynolds situation is kind of interesting out of Detroit. So he comes in, and because it was, so Godwin Igwebuike, he was still fairly useful as the backup, but also seeing Jamar Jefferson, he was sick. And so he comes in relief, winds up with 13, 14 touches this past week. I mean, also involved in the passing game. So it's while I know it's a Detroit running back outside of DeAndre Swift that we typically don't care about, but they've got Arizona this week, Atlanta in week 16, and then Seattle in week 17. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, it's not an indefensible call for you to want to pick up one of those guys. But I guess it's really just comes down to one. I don't think it doesn't look like DeAndre Swift is going to be playing this week. I mean, him and Hawkinson aren't they're not practicing at all. So we need to check on Jamar Jefferson's health. But I know it looks gross for a Detroit running back. But I mean, if you are looking for the touches, it looks like Craig Reynolds is the guy at this point.
Yeah, and Craig Reynolds looked pretty good last week. I mean, obviously, like you said, there is no one-to-one replica when it comes to DeAndre Swift. I mean, he is in his own tier as far as pure talent, but Craig Reynolds is a pretty solid dart throw from what we saw last week. I'm agreeing with you as far as DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. It was weird. The reports that came out yesterday were that Dan Campbell was hopeful that Swift would be ready to play. And, everybody got excited about it. Everyone started throwing the 50-50 around. And then today it was, no, we're not very optimistic that he's going to be able to suit up and no practice. So frustrating if you have relied on DeAndre Swift, if he got you into the playoffs and now you got to go into not only week 14, but round 1 of the playoffs without him. That is a tough pill to swallow. But anyway,
Dave,
yes.
I have a question for both of you, actually, that I just thought of. Two guys, potentially, if for any reason, I don't want to put this juju into the world, but if for any reason Eckler cannot go tomorrow night, would you take a shot on Justin Jackson? I'm not even going to say Joshua Kelly. Feel free to answer if you feel like it. But, against this now pretty stout Kansas City defense tomorrow night, neither of them have played over 35% of snaps in any given game this season.
No. I wouldn't feel comfortable with either of those guys. I did a show recently with Gilbert Manzano, a beat reporter for the Los Angeles Chargers, and I asked him that on the show. I said, hey, if Austin Eckler is unable to play, who is the guy that would get the majority of the touches? And he goes, every single show that I'm on, somebody asked me that. He goes, during the offseason, I get that question multiple times a day. He goes, and we don't know. He goes, it just changes every single day, every single week. So there isn't really a clear cut back there. Eckler is obviously the workhorse, but if he's out, I think they just take the hot hand approach. So you're really rolling the dice starting either of those guys. Chris, you got any insight into that one?
No, I agree, because it seems like neither of the two have really separated, even when like Austin Eckler is in. It's not like if Austin Eckler is in, they'll have Justin Jackson maybe come in for cleanup duties. It's really been a sprinkle of either of the two, including Larry Roundtree, into the equation as well. And so while I do think that their running game might have a little bit easier sledding with, I believe, Chris Jones is supposed to miss tomorrow, if I'm remembering correctly. Then maybe another one of their defensive starters might have also been placed on the COVID list. So it's possible that the defense isn't up to full strength tomorrow, is essentially what I'm saying. But either way, there's no way for us to really know beforehand if any of those guys are really going to separate between any of the three of them in terms of workload. I mean, they're both essentially involved in the same areas of the field. It's not like Justin Jackson will get the start, but then Joshua Kelly will only get the goal line role. So then maybe we can rely on Justin Jackson in between the 20s and maybe in the passing game. There's just no, one-for-one replacement for what Austin Eckler provides. So you really are just kind of rolling the dice. If Justin Jackson's available, I think he might be the one to go with, just because he'll probably be the one that gets the starting role. But starting role might just be he gets the first couple of series, and then Joshua Kelly comes in at the goal line. So I know with all the COVID situations going on right now, it might be easiest for us to try and stack that game as much as possible, because that has the least amount of worry. But that's just such a tough call. It really is.
If I had to pick somebody, I think it would be Justin Jackson, but my confidence level is a 3 out of 10, because
that's what I'm with you right
he
there.
might get the starting nod and then only see 5-8 touches for the entire day. But that was a great question to start off with, because we are really scraping the barrel right now. It's kind of wild that there aren't many people right now that are starting their week 1 lineup heading into the playoffs. We have been decimated with injuries. Now we've got all these COVID scares popping up at the same exact time. So it is a very, very strange week. That is absolutely certain. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show. You can send all of your questions into mailbag@footballguys.com, and that's what we open this show with. But then in the second half of the show, we go straight to the chat. So if you're viewing on YouTube right now, start dropping those questions into the chat, and we will get to them in just a little bit. Troy is not with us today, but we are joined with Football Guys Chris Allen, who is a friend of the show, has helped step in a few times in the past. But still, you can see the show every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Bring it to you on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. And like I said, we start off with the submitted questions, and then we will get to the chat. So start dropping those if you can, and subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/footballguys, so you can see this show, the Audible, the DFS Power Grid, the Dynasty Newsletter Show, the Dynasty Show, Last Call DFS Q&A, and every other show that the Football Guys team has to offer. Before we jump in, Vic, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about our sponsors over at FanUp?
FanUp, let's go. If you love fantasy football, listen up. You have to join the NFL season's hottest and easiest daily contest. We've been saying it every single week on the Mailbag Show. You can flex on the competition in FanUp's daily flex ball contest to win cash and, of course, the hottest brand prizes. It combines the best of redraft and best ball formats. There's no salary caps, drafts, no waivers, of course. FanUp allows you to pick a new team daily and stack your roster however you'd like. You could take on your friends every single week, so sign up now. Be sure to enter before Thursday Night Football, Sunday games, and Monday Night Football each week to win FanUp bonus prizes from Fanatics. Download the FanUp app now in the Apple App Store or go to fanup.app. Just be fans.
Yep, still got about 24 hours to get those lineups in, so fanup.app, go check that out. Now, one of the things I was shocked about when we looked at the submitted questions is there wasn't a single question about Rashad Penny, which blew my mind because it seems like that's all people are talking about. That being said, I took a quick glance at the chat while you were talking, and everybody in the chat is buzzing about Rashad Penny, so we will get to that in just about 20 minutes. But let's start off with some of these questions. This one comes in from our friend Anand, and he is asking, who is the current running back handoff most likely to be a fantasy superstar ROS rest of season if the main guy gets hurt? So, this is a question that we have been dealing with a lot throughout this offseason. And if you've been watching this show, you went out and you snagged those handcuffs 3 or 4 weeks ago to get ahead of the curve. And, I'm just going to throw the guys out there right now that we don't have to bore you with. Alexander Mattison, Samaje Perine, Khalil Herbert. Those are the guys that, Tony Pollard, that we said that you should have gone out and gotten a few weeks ago. But now that we are dealing with injuries to handcuffs even, let's go a step deeper. Who are some guys that you'd think about maybe picking up right now? Chris, go ahead and start us off here.
So I think one guy that he might be out on the waiver wire right now, and he's not seeing a ton of usage. Snaps are actually decreasing on a weekly basis. But if I think about like a true handcuff and not even like the AJ Dillon style of handcuff, well, what about Darrell Williams? I think now, even with, I know that a lot of folks are looking at Clyde Edwards. He's being used more as the base down, like for Kansas City, but Darrell Williams still being involved in the passing game, still being involved as a runner. We also saw him get into the paint just this past week. I mean, to look at their run out, like over the next few weeks, over the fantasy playoffs, they got some pretty decent matchups like ahead of them. So they got the Chargers going on tomorrow night. Then you get Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and then Denver like shortly afterwards. So it's like the matchups are there. His workload is still there. I'm not even like, I know the whole Derrick Gore thing was really cool like this past weekend, but that's not going to be a weekly thing, y'all. So either way, I do think that with Clyde Edwards-Helaire like being the guy, there's still going to be enough work within an offense, especially since Patrick Mahomes is now looking at trying to take more of those checkdowns instead of always using or looking for those home run hits to the deep shots to either Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. So with them using running backs as more of a larger extension of the passing game, as we've seen over the past few weeks, I think Darrell Williams is a guy that if he's available on your waiver wire, pick him up. If you need him for, let's say, like a deep RB2, it's entirely possible if you have to start him, but he's definitely one of those handcuffs that I would love to have on my bench should Edwards-Helaire wind up getting injured again this season.
Right. And it's nice to have guys like AJ Dillon and Tony Pollard that you can plug in if you're desperate and they have that standalone value. But yeah, I like guys, like Alexander Mattison that we talked about earlier, and then Darrell Williams probably doesn't have a ton of standalone value. He's kind of a desperation play, but the upside is immense. We saw what he did when CEH was out. So, Vic, do you have anybody else that we have not covered yet that you'd like to mention?
That's who I wanted to hit on too. And
great minds, right? Great minds.
Absolutely, but you just crushed that analysis. So that was fantastic. This isn't this isn't a handcuff, but a guy I saw on a couple of my waiver wires, shockingly, Michael Carter. People were trying to make room for their IR spots. Maybe these last couple of weeks have been, tough, as you know. I picked him up just to stash him. I know he's got this is shocking, but kind of a tough matchup against Miami. Over the last, I think since week 8 or 9, they've actually been stout against the running backs. I think they're giving up the fewest points per game to the running back position. Would you guys be comfortable starting Michael Carter back from IR if he's back this week?
I don't know about this week.
Not with Zach Wilson starting.
Yeah, and I think my problem with Michael Carter is it's mostly just with Zach Wilson, but I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that we saw Zach Wilson try and get Ty Johnson involved in the passing game multiple times this past week, and they couldn't complete anything. I mean, Ty Johnson, he had at least, I want to say 3 to 4 drops just this past week, and it was just, it was awful. On top of the fact that Zach Wilson had just a number of errant throws, even the throws that he was accurate on, Ty Johnson wasn't able to reel them in. So I think that Carter being back gives them a better option in the passing game than what they've had recently. And so I do think that there's at least a chance he could wind up being a guy that you can use. Maybe not this upcoming week, but the week 16 and 17, sure.
Yeah, I like that. And then I just want to call out real quickly, because you mentioned Miami's defense and the little tear that they've been on. Miami's defense was dropped over their bye week last week in a lot of leagues. Probably got snatched up as soon as waivers went through. But if you are in any leagues, go through right now. If Miami is still available, pick them up. They've got a really nice schedule for the rest of the season, and they are playing red hot on the defensive side of the ball right now. Let's go on to the next question. This one comes from our friend Abe, DFS_docket on Twitter. And Abe is asking us, with the way COVID has taken over, how many quarterbacks are you willing to roster if you are a playoff team in redraft? Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago. When you're prepping, you get rid of your backup running backs, get rid of your backup tight ends, you get rid of your, wide receiver 5s. But he does make a good point with COVID coming up. So, Vic, are you willing to maybe stash a second quarterback here?
I definitely am, especially, not even with COVID, but with the injuries to guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Are they going to be playing this week? I hope you have a backup plan just in case. Injuries piling up there. And then in addition to COVID, Baker Mayfield's on the COVID list. Hopefully you're not starting Baker Mayfield on your teams anyway. But that's a different story. But I am definitely willing to grab Taysom Hill. Might still be out there, probably not in many leagues. Tua has a great matchup this week against the Jets. He has a pretty safe floor, not that high of a ceiling. Jimmy Garoppolo has an insane schedule upcoming: Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston. If you're willing to trust Jimmy G, he's been pretty good. Even Big Ben has been good for fantasy lately in a pinch. He has Tennessee, Kansas City, and Cleveland. Not great, but again, if you're in a pinch to just have somebody on your bench, I'm definitely doing it in a couple of leagues.
Yeah, I think so much of it is how your league mates play too. I mean, there are some leagues where everybody just has that understanding that none of us are going to have backup quarterbacks. And that's great because then you can go to the waivers every single week if your guy goes down and pick up a pretty viable backup. And then you've got other leagues where everybody is, just spiteful and hoarding quarterbacks and making it tougher for everybody else. And those you might want to get ahead of the curve and roster an extra one. So a lot of this does come down to your league's tendencies and the people that you're playing with. But yeah, I think this year, like those guys that you called out, Ben Roethlisberger, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're probably available in just about every league. So I think that you're okay streaming. I'd advise against stashing a backup. But Chris, do you have anything to add to this? Are you thinking about stashing a backup this time of year?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually done that on a couple of playoff teams myself, just for the simple fact of what Vic was talking about. Either you have the option to start them should you need them in a pinch, but also think about it from the game theory side. Some of your opponents are also going to need that sort of depth at the position. So if you're able to essentially play the blocker and keep them from having those similar options. So let's say if they have Lamar Jackson on their roster, say they are waiting to see what happens with Josh Allen, and you've now taken away an option from them in order to start, then you've actually improved your odds in order to win this week. Now we'll see if either of those two wind up making it onto the field. But I think there's also like that game strategy portion to it that can help you win your league. So yeah, I'm all for it, at least this season in the context of what we're talking about right now. Absolutely. Picking up at least one extra one. If you got a deeper bench, maybe a second backup, but at the very least having a second or having rostering two quarterbacks isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, especially if you've got one of those questionable guys, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, somebody like that. You should have already picked that up just so you're not, hoping to pick up whatever scraps are left on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
This next question comes in from Twitter at BitTom52, and this is a great question here. James Conner has been killing it for me. Do I keep starting him with Chase Edmonds back? Chris, I mean, there's a lot of speculation here. Help us out, man. What do we do when Chase Edmonds comes back?
Oh, no, you're still starting James Conner without a doubt. I mean, if it wasn't already a done deal before last week, they're running wildcat plays for this dude in the red zone, and he's converting on top of that. Actually, even more so, his involvement in the passing game, seeing the number of catches that he's been able to take to the house. Just his involvement overall in that offense. And now with them also losing DeAndre Hopkins for the rest of the season, they're going to need as many of their trusted starters in that offense as possible. And so without seeing as much of Chase Edmonds when that offense has really started to get rolling as it has over the past few weeks, I still see James Conner having at least the majority of the role. Now, whether or not they can still use Edmonds as a pass catcher, absolutely. He can still be a part of that passing game, no problem. But James Conner has shown that he can still be even a more viable or efficient option in that passing game, considering what he's capable of doing through the air. So now I have no worries about Chase Edmonds at this point. James Conner has shown he's not washed. He can completely continue to put the team on his back. And with the fact that they're getting creative with him in the red zone, it's James Conner all the way for me.
Yeah, and Jim Coventry was a guy that I talked to this offseason that completely sold me on James Conner. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but he talked about how being in Pittsburgh was one of the worst fits for James Conner, and then going to Arizona is one of the best fits for him. That in Pittsburgh, he was consistently seeing a loaded box. And James Conner, he doesn't really have that patience that you used to see with Le'Veon Bell, where he'd kind of bounce behind the line, wait for the roll. James Conner is a get the ball and just run straight forward, use that 220-pound body to just mow through defenders. And now playing against Arizona, they're outmatched in the trenches every single time. They got 5 linemen, and they're usually seeing 3 defenders there. So the first contact he's hitting is with a full head of steam in the secondary, and you just see him just mowing through linebackers. This is a fantastic fit for James Conner. So, yeah, I don't think anything that we saw last year had to do with him being washed. I think it was just kind of a scheme fit with Pittsburgh, and now he found a great home in Arizona, and he's killing it. So I saw you nodding, Vic. Chris summarized that well. I think that, you 100% just keep starting James Conner when he comes back, because he has been a touchdown machine this year.
Second behind JT. He's just
Seriously.
smashing it. 14 touchdowns. Touchdowns in 7 consecutive weeks. I think they said that was an Arizona record.
Yeah.
For running back.
And even before Chase Edmonds got hit, James Conner was a very viable fantasy asset just because of his touchdowns. And there was some fear that he would regress a little bit, but now he has shown that he can handle the workload. So I don't think you have any qualms starting him regardless of Chase Edmonds' status. Next question comes in from Twitter as well, and we are being asked, with Lamar Jackson trending out, even if he wasn't, his performance has been shaky. Do I go with Tua versus the Jets or Taysom Hill versus the Bucks? I am, I had to make this exact decision yesterday on my waiver wire because I was concerned about Lamar Jackson. But Vic, I want to hear from you first. Tua versus the Jets, Taysom versus the Bucks. Who do you prefer?
Goodness, we already talked about this one today too. I'm gonna go with Taysom Hill because he can perform pretty badly. And when I say pretty badly, I mean, wow, this is horrible to watch. You look at your lineup and there's 25 points there for your quarterback position. I mean, he had 4 interceptions in his first game starting back, and he still scored 25 points. Barely any production last week. All of a sudden, 2 rushing touchdowns, and he's fine for your team. I don't recommend watching the game or watching your lineup while he's playing, but just look at the score afterwards. But he's got in my opinion, a better ceiling. They're very close. Tua's playing so well. I don't want to take anything away from him. He has an insane completion percentage this year. I'm super happy to see him finally balling out. But he's got that safe floor, but his ceiling is not quite as high as a guy like Taysom Hill or some other guys on the waiver wire. But if you're in if you're projected to win by a lot of points, I'm fine just grabbing Tua as a safe option. The Jets, he will be fine. He'll have at least 2 touchdowns against the Jets, I think, this week.
Yeah, what do you think, Chris? Because so many of Taysom Hill's points come on the ground, and Tampa Bay has a fantastic rush defense. So I think there's a little bit of reason to be concerned about Taysom Hill in this matchup. But this is a tough one. I want to hear from you, Chris.
Josh Allen just ran all
that is true.
She's got a point. That's absolutely right. And that was going to be like part of my, reasoning for agreeing with Vic about like starting Taysom Hill, because he provides the volatility that can wind up winning you your week. Whereas with Tua, I do think the floor is certainly there for him. He definitely does not have the same ceiling as Taysom does. But going up against the Jets, I mean, the past two quarterbacks to face the Jets have wound up in the top 12. I mean, they're dead last in essentially every single defensive efficiency metric, EPA per play, like so on and so forth. So it's like, sure. I mean, it's easy to say that we're going to start essentially all of our players against the Jets, especially with them getting healthy. I mean, Devontae Parker should be back this week. It looked like he was getting eased in against the Giants before their bye. Jalen Waddle healthy, Mike Gesicki's still there. And also, I think the one thing that kind of puts me more into his camp is just the fact that they don't have any running backs since at least 2 of them were placed on the COVID list over the past week or so. Malcolm Brown might be coming. Yeah, I mean, Duke Johnson. I know we've been wanting Duke Johnson to be a thing for like 6 years, though. I don't know if that's going to happen this week. That would be hilarious if it finally did, because I'd just be there for all the Twitter memes and stuff to happen.
Rashad Penny and Duke Johnson weeks back to back.
Gosh.
I don't know if the fantasy community will be able to handle such a thing. But at the very least, I think Tua has enough of a floor in order to at least give you what you need for the first week of the fantasy playoffs.
Now, let me throw another one out there, because we got another question that is another start-sit question involving Taysom Hill. And this one comes from our friend Barely Literati on Twitter. And she's asking, Russell Wilson or Taysom Hill? Chris, who are you taking in this one?
All right. So I am going to go with Russell Wilson in this one. And I lean towards Russell Wilson just because we've seen his efficiency start to pick up over the past few weeks. Looking at the Rams defense, they are not the same Rams defense as they have been in years past, even if they do wind up getting like Ramsey back for this particular game. But either way, like this is one of those matchups, those divisional matchups that like Russ Wilson has actually been like he's gotten up for. Like DK Metcalf has actually been like fairly decent against the Rams like over the past couple of seasons and the last few matchups. So with Russell Wilson performing somewhat better, he's still able to do that whole pirouette out of the backfield and hit Tyler Lockett for 45 yards. He can always do that. That's always in his bag of tricks. Also rushing for like at least 20 yards per game. It's all there for him to at least have a floor matchup, like almost similar to what we were talking about with Tua. So at least I lean more towards Russell Wilson, but I know folks will see that he's playing against a tough defense, and also with his volatility the past few weeks, they might lean towards Taysom Hill, but I'll at least put my vote on Russ for this week.
Now let's go off on a quick tangent here, and this isn't a question, but it was something that I talked about yesterday while I was on a show, and you do the Dynasty newsletter show where you guys focus on Dynasty, and we were talking about Tyler Lockett's Dynasty value. So let's just real quickly, I want to discuss that with you two and kind of get your take. I'm personally terrified. He goes into next year, 30 years old. He might not have Russell Wilson. I mean, is Tyler Lockett a guy that you are just trying to jump ship on right now and get whatever you can?
No, not necessarily, because the types of routes that Tyler Lockett has run like historically are the ones that most likely any sort of bridge quarterback, or even if they try and do this thing with Geno Smith, I don't think they'd actually do it. But either way, like he would be the one that would at least have like the safer floor. And even between the two of them, I mean, between him and DK Metcalf, like they should be fine because the offense is concentrated enough that the targets and opportunity I would think would be there for them. Because I'm not expecting Gerald Everett to be like a larger part of their long-term plans. And so if really we're only talking about those two guys, we'll see what happens with D. Eskridge over the offseason if they want to continue to like bring him along. But it really is just those two dudes. So I wouldn't have at least much concern like for Tyler Lockett. I mean, of course, it would be a downgrade in but losing one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, of course, is going to hurt your fantasy outlook. But it's not going to be as large of an impact, in my opinion, to Tyler Lockett. At least, I mean, especially given the way that he's been deployed on the field historically.
Yeah, and especially over the last couple of years, he started running those shorter routes. So that is a very good point. He might lose some of those deep balls and that connection with Russ, but yeah, he still probably will have a safe floor going forward. I didn't really think about that. But Vic, I'm going to throw this next question to you. We got a bunch of questions about Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is somebody that everyone's kind of freaking out a little bit because he has had some bummer weeks recently. But this one is pick 2 in half-point PPR. We got Hollywood Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney. I think Hollywood is kind of the smash here for everybody. Maybe I'm speaking on behalf of you guys when I shouldn't be.
Think so?
Go ahead, you take it.
Ravens. You're
Pick
almost
2.
like a Ravens homer sometimes.
I do love.
funny.
Yeah, they're my number 2 team.
Well, Hollywood hasn't had over 55 yards since week 9. Okay, so he's with the wide receiver. I looked at this before the show. Wide receiver 6 overall, weeks 1 through 9. Wide receiver 40, weeks 10 through the present day. Just absolutely unreal flip-flop. He was having a career season with Lamar before that, and their offense has kind of been stifled. So, and Green Bay is a decent spot here for him to perform, but I mean, he had that chance too. He had a smash matchup where I was just like 10 points or something he had. I can't trust it. Not for that kind of, maybe as a flex, right? But I think if I had to choose two, I'm gonna get rid of Jeudy here. I think with Jerry Jeudy, I personally, and I know others likely, are hanging on to this name value, Jerry Jeudy, and that those draft notions with Jeudy, because we just love him and we want to see him do well. Yeah, and his highest weekly score this season was 13.2 PPR points in week 1. All the way back in week 1. That's the most he's ever scored. So there's just like Denver's going with the ground game kind of plan right now. The team of Javonte and Melvin Gordon, they're doing fantastic on the ground. There's just not enough volume for these pass catchers to really have a crazy game. And with Teddy Bridgewater, it's just kind of been average in the last couple of weeks. And with Mooney, he's been pretty disappointing in the last couple of weeks. I'd fire him right up again this week, though, against the Vikings. Out of these options, Minnesota's giving up 46 points per game to the wide receiver position since week 9. Just like
insane.
Absolutely crazy. So I'd be sitting Jeudy out of these options for sure.
Yeah. All right. I think we're in agreement on that. Let's go. We got another Jeudy question, and I'll throw this one to you, Chris. All right. And I think this one's a little bit easier. Van Jefferson or Jerry Jeudy in half PPR?
Yeah, that's a lock. Give me Van Jefferson, the dude that had to shake his father's hand at midfield after dunking on them like this past weekend. Yeah, give me Van Jefferson. No, it's really good to see after, like, it's almost like the addition by subtraction thing, like where they get rid of a couple pieces over the offseason, and now we get to see like Van Jefferson kind of shine. Like, I'm not discounting like Robert Woods like injury or his absence and whatnot, but really seeing them like forced into this situation where they can use Van Jefferson. And when they're using some of those like over like high-low concepts, like where it's now Jefferson getting some of the deeper target, we're seeing him shine. I mean, on that touchdown pass, I mean, it was just Matt Stafford resetting his feet and completely letting that ball fly. And Jefferson, like, his speed has always been like a thing that they just haven't been able to really push him to get on the field, because they've been able to just beat teams over the head with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. And then, of course, like mixing in like Tyler Higbee as well. So it's like, I'm now seeing him being able to become a larger part of that offense. I mean, the touchdown equity alone makes him a better shot than Jerry Jeudy. I mean, the Broncos, as of right now, I mean, they're bottom 6 in terms of pass rate over expectation once they get into the red zone. It's really just Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon. So I just can't really see the upside for starting Van Jefferson over Jerry Jeudy at this point in the season. I mean, Jerry Jeudy isn't even really separating from the rest of the pass catchers in his offense from a target share perspective. So I just don't see the upside in starting Jerry Jeudy at all, especially at this point in the season. No, give me Van Jefferson.
And you know, everybody is so enamored with Odell Beckham and, you know, the storyline and the drama and the media. And, you know, obviously people are going to get excited about Odell Beckham in Los Angeles. But since he joined the team, Van Jefferson is out targeting him. And even if you throw away that first game where, you know, Odell was kind of getting up to speed, just over the last 3 weeks, Odell has 22 targets and Van Jefferson has 20. So it's not like Odell just completely stepped into the Robert Woods role and took on that entire target share. Those are kind of getting split up, and we're looking at a different offense here where Odell is running a lot of the shorter routes. And, you know, if they're seeing a similar target share, but Van Jefferson is getting his opportunity further down the field, Van Jefferson might be more valuable right now than Odell Beckham in fantasy football. So, yeah, you know, I wanted to bring this question up because I thought it was a good conversation where we could all basically just talk about how awesome and underrated Van Jefferson has been these last few weeks, because he is finally stepping in and looking like the real deal.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And with Odell on the COVID list now, they might need him a ton. If it's just Cooper Kupp and Van this week, I mean, he's a lock for your lineup.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of course. Now let's go to the last question here. And this is kind of an open-ended question that we could talk about a little bit. Luke Hedge 22 is asking us, should I hold on to Derrick Henry? Victoria, are you holding Derrick Henry?
That's the right answer right there. That note she just make. That's it. That's it. That's it.
I mean, if you can, sure, why not? But the reports that have been coming out is that he's not going to be ready until after the fantasy football playoffs. Is that correct, guys? That's
what I've heard.
Playoffs and possibly before. So, like, maybe if we're lucky, we see him come back for, like, you know, a limited role in week 18. I think that's kind of the best case scenario.
Yeah,
yes, that's about when I talked with Dr. Gene on, what was it? I think it was like last Thursday's show. He said that at best, a very minor role in week 18, but the most likely scenario is he'll be available in the actual playoffs. For Tennessee.
Shake the dust off before the playoffs, and that's the best for them.
Yeah.
Now, what I think that's a little bit more intriguing in this question, you know, it isn't from Luke Hedge 22, but what about Calvin Ridley? Because I just saw Calvin Ridley get dropped in a ton of my leagues when waivers went through yesterday. Is Calvin Ridley somebody you're still holding on to, or is that one? These are both tough because they're clogging up your roster and they've got immense upside.
I don't see him having. There's no reason for Calvin Ridley to come back this season. Atlanta's not playing for anything, so why would he come back? You know, he's working on himself, his mental health, all that good stuff. So what reason to come back, especially to the Falcons? That's not going to help his mental health.
That's just what I was going to say. Yeah. Hey, welcome back. Hold this L. Like,
right.
You know, and with all the injuries, everything we're dealing with, COVID list players, like you likely don't have the room to be holding guys like Derrick Henry and Calvin Ridley anymore.
Yeah. So I think at this point, you know, it's safe to cut those guys. Start looking for those handcuffs like we talked about earlier, maybe a second quarterback or something like that. But I think it's time to throw away hopes and dreams of Derrick Henry making a return to your fantasy season. Now I'm going to start going through the chat. We have a ton of questions. I thought this was going to be a quiet show, but this chat is blowing up right now. So we're going to try to run through these questions as quickly as we can. But before we do that, Vic, let everybody know why they need to sign up for the Football Guys Daily email newsletter.
Absolutely. You have to sign up for our Football Guys daily email update if you haven't already. I know you have because you've been watching and listening to the show, so you must have by now. But just in case, I'll remind you, every single day, Joe Bryant brings us all of the latest from our Football Guys staff, the news, transaction, rumors, articles, podcasts, all of our shows from the Football Guys staff. And it gives you a huge edge against your league mates. You're getting that news in just a little format, 5-minute read to get ahead of all that news, especially with all the COVID drama, COVID lists, injuries popping up. You want to have all that information in one central place to read and look at. So make sure you sign up for the Football Guys daily email update at footballguys.com.
Absolutely. And like Vic said, you should have done that already. If you've been watching the show, it would be crazy if you're watching the show and you haven't already signed up for that. Let's go ahead and jump right in. We got a ton of questions, and the first one comes in from Swaggy P on YouTube. Swaggy P is asking us, Kerryon Johnson visited the Jaguars today. Should J-Rob owners be concerned about this news? There are a million reasons to be concerned if you're a James Robinson owner, and this is just one more, but who wants to take this one?
That's literally the answer. You can't even if this didn't happen, would you guys be playing James Robinson this week?
I'd be worried that Urban Meyer is going to literally kick him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thanks. So here's the real question, though. So, and this might be rhetorical, but did Kerryon Johnson go to Ohio State? No, he didn't go to Ohio State. Okay, so then Urban Meyer's not going to play him anyway. He's not going to give him any touches. Yeah, so it doesn't even matter. So so there's the easy analysis right there.
If you guys are wondering why Dave and I both said Urban Meyer would kick him if you didn't see the news, or it
Look
came
at Josh
out.
Lambo.
Josh Lambo, the kicker, in practice, Urban Meyer supposedly kicked Josh Lambo. If you want to take a look at that headline, go right ahead. But
I couldn't believe that article as I was reading it.
No, the worst part is that you can believe it. Yes, you can.
I can 100%. After all the stuff that's come out so far this season, if he was going to go ahead and hire, let's say, a coach with a questionable past, I'll just leave it at that. I think that's where it started. It was just like, no. And then the Tim Tebow stuff. Yeah, I can believe this too. I can absolutely believe this.
This has been just an absolute circus in Jacksonville. But it gives us a lot to talk about. That's for sure.
Over under how many more days will he be the head coach?
I give it to he'll coach through this game.
Really? See, I'm concerned that
tonight
Khan now is at the point where he's just like, no, like you've got an ironclad contract. Like I paid you to be the coach here for a long time and you're going to coach. So I'm almost worried that Khan just doesn't care about the team and he's just going to.
What if they lose to Houston?
I don't know. I mean, if he's,
you think it won't matter though?
I mean, I don't think that Khan is really, he's a businessman. I don't think he really cares all that much about the team. And I think that he would be the type of person that'll just say, you know what, you signed this contract and you're going to coach here until that contract is over, whether you want to or not. I mean, it's really gotten into like two big egos right now that are just kind of staring at each other. Either Urban Meyer's got to change his ways up and start coaching the team a little bit better. I don't know what's going to happen, but
I was Trevor Lawrence. I just retire. Like, just I'm out, guys.
Full name and luck.
Yeah.
What is Trevor Lawrence though? Has he thrown one touchdown in the last 6 games or something crazy?
It's bad.
For the number one overall pick, you would expect he'd overcome some of this drama.
Yeah.
With
hasn't had a multi-touchdown game since week 1. That is that's tough. Anyway, we can talk about Urban Meyer all day. There's enough people talking about Urban Meyer. Let's get to some start-sit questions and help some people win round 1 of their playoffs. Naral on YouTube is asking us Rashad Penny or Ramadre Stevenson. Just to give you guys a little bit of news, Damian Harris returned to practice. It looks like Damian Harris is going to play this week. This is a good question. Vic, Penny or Stevenson?
I think because of the fact that I expect Damian Harris to play, I would go Penny. Even though we're hearing Adrian Peterson might be back, he could steal a couple goal line touches. I'm still going to roll with Penny. It's a hot hand last week.
Yeah, he looked good. So I'm going with Penny here. What about you, Chris?
No, 100% I'm with Penny. I would have liked to see him involved a bit more in the passing game, but the fact that it's not just what Penny does as a runner, but what he does to the entire offense, because if now defenses now have to at least respect the running game outside of Russell Wilson, it allows for more pass protection for Russ. It allows him to do his thing in order to get the ball out to Everett if he's not point shaving and turn the ball over, but to Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, or so on and so forth. So for Carroll and all the like his blustering about wanting to be like, wanting to like hashtag establish it, Penny at least gives them that option to do that without really like significantly changing the offense, because Russ is still going to do his thing. So no, I lean towards Penny.
Yeah. All I can say is, I started Rashad Penny last week in SFB, and I was watching that game. And
that worked out.
It did. But I also started Lamar, and I missed playoffs by like 3 points. So that was disappointing. But what I can tell you is, as somebody who's followed Rashad Penny his entire career, if you start him, be prepared to hold your breath every single time he touches.
Just don't watch the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, is just because I can't tell you how stressed out I was. Like, every time I saw him run, he'd hit the ground, and is he coming up? Is he going to stand up?
Well, what's that tweet about the Seahawks? Like, they can't play a normal game anyway.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I saw that.
And Sunday it was not a normal game to begin with. They were essentially like Houston was going toe-to-toe with them throughout most of the game. Like, they can't have just a regular game. So, 100%. I'm just not going to watch the game if I roster Penny.
Wow.
Yeah, that's probably smart. Now, this is a good question, too. We talked about Derrick Henry and we talked about Calvin Ridley. Antonio Brown. Is Antonio Brown worth dropping, or is he somebody that you're going to hold on to and hope that he can come back when his suspension ends? I believe he's available to return next week, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I think
so.
Yeah, so it's because it started the week beforehand, and then after this game, it should be good.
So I think
I'm not dropping him.
Yeah.
Someone dropped him in one of my redraft leagues. Shockingly, only one person dropped him in redraft. I picked him up. I don't care.
I'm not wide receiver number, and Tom Brady is calling the shots there. I mean, I think that's what it's going to come down to. If Tom Brady wants AB back, AB is going to be back. So no, I would not drop Antonio Brown. I think that you hold on to him for now.
Mm-hmm.
We got another start sit question here. Full PPR, Damian Harris or Deonta Foreman? This is a good question. I'm going to lean towards Damian Harris here, but I want to get your opinions. Chris, who are you taking out of these two?
Yeah, I lean more towards Damian Harris, at least seeing him be at least a decent part of their passing game. I mean, his routes run are fairly comparable to that of Ramondre Stevenson. So their team total, if I'm remembering correctly, their implied team total for this weekend is higher than that of Tennessee's. While I do like Deonta Foreman, he hasn't been nearly as efficient of a runner from a success rate as Damian Harris has been in the past. Although Foreman does have, he has the most in terms of the high value touches for Tennessee. But either way, I mean, the Patriots are a much more efficient offense than what we're talking about with the Titans. So I lean towards Harris.
And one thing I want to call out is, if you're looking at rankings right now, especially consensus rankings where they're aggregating a whole bunch of rankings together, you might see that Deonta Foreman and Damian Harris are pretty close. But a lot of that is because Damian Harris didn't play last week. He is, still questionable throughout this week. As soon as he is declared active, you're going to see him jump 15, 20 spots in those rankings. So I think that's something that you need to be aware of. Right now on paper, at the aggregate, rankings, they might look similar, but if both of these guys are 100% go, Damian Harris is the easy start here, at least for me.
Even after seeing Pittsburgh get gashed the last 4 weeks in a row, I think this is closer for me than it might be for y'all. I mean, Pittsburgh, I said this in the beginning of the show, they're allowing just a mad amount of points per game, second most behind the Jets in the last couple of weeks. They're just getting gashed on the ground. And I know Foreman's not, the lead, the guy, the only guy. Hilliard's there, McNichols is whatever. You know how I feel about McNichols. I think it's closer than for me, this is close. I don't know. I'd wait to see on the Harris injury.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. And I think the only reason why, well, not the only reason, but I would say the main reason why I would lean more towards Harris is just because of that split backfield in Tennessee. Because if you do have Jerry McNichols taking targets, Hilliard also taking targets, your best bet for Foreman to return value is if he falls into the end zone, which is entirely possible against Pittsburgh, not taking that away. But at least from a base down workload, type of look at how either of those two backs are going to get deployed, that's why I lean more towards Harris. But I do agree though with the injury situation, it makes it a bit closer than just saying, oh yeah, Harris, New England Patriots, higher implied team total, obviously the better pick. And I think I think you do bring up a good point, Vic. It's a little bit closer than that.
So one more thing too is I think that this is going to be a pretty close game between the Colts and the Patriots. I'm not expecting this to be a blowout either way. And when we've seen Ramondre Stevenson get a lot of his run has been, obviously in the game where Damian Harris missed, but also late in the games when the game is out of reach and they, that's when Bill Belichick likes to put his young guys in there and help get them developed and get them some real NFL game reps. But I think that if this is a close game, if it's heading into the fourth quarter and it's still a one-score game, Bill Belichick still prefers to get the ball into Damian Harris's hand. So, we're a lot of times at the end of the game, it looks like there's a 50-50 split. That's because the Patriots have just been blowing out opponents and Ramondre Stevenson gets run in the second half. But if this is a close game, we might see Damian Harris get 20, 25 carries where he could be a lot more involved if this game is going to be, close throughout the end. So, I'm pretty high on Damian Harris this week. Even though it's technically a tough matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, I think the game script is going to work very heavily in Damian Harris's favor.
I think somebody might have to fact check this on me, but I thought it was yesterday, the day beforehand, that the Colts wound up putting one of their linebackers on the COVID list, like Frank or something like that. It's like last name starts with a Z. Somebody fact check me on that.
I got to be honest with you, Chris, man. We've had like 80 people go on the COVID list since yesterday. I can't even.
Right, I know. He's probably one of the 75.
I'll check.
Oh my goodness, it has been absolutely crazy. Well, Victoria's looking that up. Let's go ahead and pull up this next question here. Jay Peach on YouTube is asking us: Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Green, Michael Gallup, Rashad Bateman, full PPR.
We're just picking one or two.
If this is one, I mean, it's very, very clearly Chase. I don't even think that's a question.
Well, yeah, because like McLaurin's got the concussion. Yeah, Gallup, he's like essentially like the let's say 2B, in that offense. AJ Green, I'm assuming. I get it with DeAndre Hopkins out. Okay, fine. But even still, like their pass rate over expectation doesn't really lend itself. And also Green is not like the primary target. I mean, Chase is the only wide receiver one I see out of this group.
Yeah. So I think Chase is the obvious one. I'm assuming there's got to be a second here because Chase is the slam dunk here. So out of the remaining, let's pick one. McLaurin.
There it is. Oh, somebody just said it in the chat. Zaire Franklin. Right. That was the name.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. But no, the only other like guy out of that list, I think, I don't know, Vic, like Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of sticks out to me, but tell me I'm crazy.
No, you're not. He's had 32 targets over his last 4 games. I know I just wrote wrote for the roundtable article and wrote that in there for Football Guys coming out tomorrow. So that's why it's at top of mind. He's been great. I think wide receiver, I want to say 18 or something like that over the last couple of weeks. He's getting the targets. AJ Green had so many targets in this past game, though. And now with Hopkins out, he might be a target machine. I do like AJ Green. It's really, really close between Amon-Ra and AJ Green there for me.
I'd go Amon-Ra here. But yeah, that's a good thought-provoking question. We always like those. Kevin is asking us, is Connor playing this week? I don't think we've gotten much clarity on that yet. Last I saw was that he was going in for an MRI. We got the news today that DeAndre Hopkins is done for the regular season. We haven't gotten news about Connor. So, really, you got to wait until Friday. Whatever his practice status is on Friday, that'll give you a better idea. But right now, I don't think we really know. Brad Kirby is asking us start to Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Deonta Foreman, or Jamal Williams. Limping in now with Hopkins out. We got to pick 2 out of here. Don't
go so quickly saying Chubb.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A few weeks ago, this was a no-brainer, and now not so much.
I'm nervous. I mean, are you playing Chubb if Baker Mayfield is not playing? Are they going to lean on him more? Is he going to be one of the only healthy running backs? Are they going to involve
D'Ernest
Johnson more? Yes, thank you. That's such a toss-up. Aaron Jones, barely any carries last week, but 2 touchdowns. That's also scary. CEH, 2 touchdowns propping up his score. He usually has a low floor. This is tough. Goodness. I don't think
I'd go too cute here. I'd go with Chubb
and Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't feel good about it. You really don't.
I mean, CEH is intriguing because the Chargers have been so bad against the run. So
That was going to be the guy that I was going to pick if nobody else was going to. I get it I have no qualms with Chubb and Aaron Jones, but he'd be the only other one out of that group that I would feel at least semi-comfortable with starting. Yes. No to Foreman, absolutely not to Jamal Williams.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That is a really tough question. Now, this isn't a question, but Kevin is saying, I think I should stash Fields for week 16 and 17 in case Dak misses. I haven't heard anything about Dak. Maybe I missed some news. I don't know if he's
I haven't either. Maybe he's saying just in case.
Just on the off chance. But I just want to point out that I do like that move. I've got Fields stashed in a few places when we were talking about backup quarterbacks. When you look at that 16 and 17 matchups, he's playing against the Seahawks and the Giants. He's been putting up QB1 numbers lately. He's been showing his prowess as a rusher. So try not to be too much of a homer here, but I do like Justin Fields. If
he's got a good matchup this week. I wrote him up as a potential streamer for this week. Minnesota, I mean, they've been lit up not just as not just as from a passing perspective, but also from a rushing perspective. I think it was like Lamar Jackson when they played against the Vikings. He went like 10 for 120 as a rusher, if I'm remembering the stat line correctly. So it's like, if Fields looked as good, or at least as, let's say not as good, that's probably like overstating considering he threw a pick six like on Sunday. But if he looked at like as decent as he did this past weekend, I think he can put up good numbers this week. And also like his 16-17 matchups. Yeah, he's a definite stash.
So let me throw one out there for you rest of the season, because we talked about this guy earlier being a pretty good pickup off the waiver wire right now. Tua or Justin Fields rest of the season?
Fields
for the ceiling. And you guys already hit it. This week's matchup is real juicy against Minnesota. Not only are they giving up the most points to wide receivers, also QBs for the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a personal question. I just snuck one of my own in there, but in a league that I got Lamar Jackson, I picked up Tua today, and now you guys are making me think that maybe I go to Fields.
No, get you some Fields, man. If you need to, get Justin Fields.
All right. Well, next question comes in from the Chosen Rose on YouTube and asking us, pick one, AJ Green, Jerry Jeudy, Russell Gage, or MVS. Seems like everybody is just looking for reasons to bench Jerry Jeudy this week.
Right?
Him on so many start questions. Nobody has faith in him anymore. AJ Green, Jerry Jeudy, Russell Gage, or MVS. This is a great question. There's two guys that I really like. Vic, start us off. Who would you pick out of this group?
I like me some Russell Gage. I do. Green is close for me, but with the target share Gage has had lately, he's been consistent in the last 3 weeks. His lowest points were this past week was 10.8 or something like that.
He got off to a blazing start too.
I know,
all
that
of
was
those points
such a
came in the first 2 drives, and then nothing after that.
I know that was a bummer, but in game script they were, it wasn't too great. But I like Gage here. I know I just wrote him up for that same roundtable article. I'm trying to open it to see if I have any more little tidbits here for y'all. But what do you guys think?
I thought I was going to be the only person to say Russell Gage, but that's who I'm going with too. I like Russell Gage out of this group. You can make a strong argument for AJ Green with DeAndre Hopkins out, but Russell Gage has just stepped in really nicely as that wide receiver 1 in Atlanta.
Now the only other one out of that list, and I'm trying to not get into him. And also he popped up with a back injury today, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling this weekend. I'm thinking about it. I know Alan Lazard was like the dude this past weekend. Of course, Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams, but like wide receivers, going up against Baltimore the past few weeks. Donovan Peoples-Jones just went 7 for 90 against them. The week prior to that, when Deontay Johnson ripped him up, but Chase Claypool had a good game. So it's like the profile of wide receivers that have done well against them kind of fits the MVS archetype. So it's like, I don't think it's too crazy, but I do think that Russell Gage is probably the best out of the bunch. But I got MVS in the back of my head.
I like you plugging it, but man, I could not imagine having the gumption to start MVS in the fantasy football playoffs. That's a ballsy move.
That's the tough part, is that putting a guy that's so boom bust into your lineup. Yeah. So, but especially after let's say because they play on Sunday, right? Or do they play on Saturday? I forget which day they play on. But we've got so many games between now and Sunday. If you wind up being behind in your matchup and you need some volatility in order to pick things up, MVS could be that dude that you would need, because Russell Gage isn't going to give you the same ceiling that MVS is going to give you.
Yeah, and the Packers play late on Sunday, so there will be quite a few games in it. I like that. That's some good analysis there. What's up, Vic?
Gage plays San Fran since week 9, giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers.
All right.
Done.
I like it.
Could be done.
I think Gage is the move here, but you do make a good point that if you do need something to swing for the fences a little bit, I think MVS is a guy. I mean, we know he's got the ceiling, and we know that he's got a basement floor. So that's just that's what you're doing. If you want the variance, if you need the high ceiling, MVS is a solid pick.
Yeah.
Next question comes in from Trey. Trey is asking us Wentz versus New England or Heineke, who may not be 100% versus Philadelphia. Also, should I play the New England defense or Colts defense? Minnesota defense is also available. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Wentz or Heineke? Heineke has like very quietly been like right at that QB1 bubble since he took over as the starter in Washington. Very, very quietly. But
I would be terrified to play Carson Wentz against New England, even if they're off the bye, fresh. That's too scary for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. In that same vein, the Eagles' defensive front, I mean, they've been just terrifying. And with Washington having so many, I don't think they have maybe 1 or 2 starters on their offensive line like from week 1. I think that's all they've got left because they've been just so decimated by injuries and with all like the COVID stuff that's been going on with Washington. So it's like neither are good options. I'll just leave it at that. But I do get like wanting to play. But I guess even with Heineke, so like he doesn't have Logan Thomas anymore. We don't know if Terry McLaurin's going to be back. I don't think
Jones is hurt too.
Ricky Seals-Jones is hurt. I don't think J.D. McKissick practiced today. At best, he was limited. So it's
going out there with DeAndre Carter as his wide receiver 1.
And I think Cam Sims
is on COVID.
Cam Sims something. So it's like, man, that's like.
Here's the thing. Is there anyone else on your waiver wire, Jay? Because
that's the real
these
question.
guys are like top 20 and worse for this week. They're both really, really tough plays. If there's any other guys we've discussed over the course of the show tonight on your waiver wire, definitely
go get Justin Fields.
Out. Yeah,
go get Justin Fields.
Yeah, I agree. Now. Great pick there. And then as far as defense, I'm probably going to play the Colts versus New England myself, but if I had New England, I'm playing New England 100%. I don't. I only have the Colts.
Yep.
So.
All right, guys. We just have a few minutes left, and we do have some questions, and I want to try to get to all these. So let's kind of rapid fire through the rest of these. J. Rob or Damian Harris? I am going Damian Harris here.
What about you?
Mm-hmm. All right. Next one: James Robinson or Rashad Penny?
Penny. I cannot trust James Robinson right now.
Penny. Yep.
Penny. Yep. And then here's the question that I was waiting for. I knew Abe was going to drop in the chat. Saquon Barkley or Rashad Penny? I tweeted about this yesterday, kind of tongue in cheek, but I think that it's a very realistic question to ask this week. So,
I'm playing Saquon.
I'm
probably he had a good week.
Here.
Yeah.
I like his matchup too. Rest of the season though, I think I kind of like Penny more than Saquon.
That's fair. But,
you see, Saquon didn't practice today. Ankle injury, the same ankle that's been bothering him for 2 years now is flaring up, and he didn't practice today.
Man, just shut the Giants down, man. Just shut it all down.
Oh, yeah.
Shut it all down, New York. Both teams.
Tomorrow with Zach Rosenblatt, and he's the New York Giants beat reporter, and I have a lot of questions to ask him about what the long.
He probably has the same questions.
With Saquon, because it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Here's a great one: Melvin Gordon or wide receiver 2 over the last 3 weeks. Hunter Renfrow in the flex. If this is PPR, you got to go Renfrow.
Oh, yeah. Give me that balding white dude that plays in the slot. Give me that dude.
My accountant, my Lord Hunter Renfrow.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
But it looks like he should be doing your taxes. Give me that guy.
Oh, my gosh. I love him so much. They said it is half PPR in the chat. I'm still going Renfrow. He is on fire.
Yeah.
Literally. And Waller did practice again.
Yeah. Cooper Kupp is the only person outscoring Hunter Renfrow over the last 3 weeks. It is... Yeah, I mean, he stepped in, he kept all of his target share, and then he also absorbed all of Darren Waller's targets. It's been pretty unbelievable to see over the last few weeks. Last question: do they cancel the Rams versus Raiders game? I mean,
I don't think
any games are getting canceled.
Goodell ain't missing out on that money.
Yeah, there's no way that they can reschedule these. Bye weeks are over. I think every game plays this week. Well, we did it. We got through the chat. That isn't an easy thing to do to get through all those questions, but we did it. Chris, thank you for stepping in for Troy. Thank you for repping the Troy brand with the Thirsty Thursday hat. I'd love to get a song and a dance out of you, but I know.
No. You don't get the full Troy experience. Like this is all you get. You get the hat, and then that's it.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys for joining me this week. I want to thank the entire audience for tuning in once again. It has been a pleasure all season being able to help you out. Hopefully, we were able to provide some knowledgeable advice, and help you guys out. And we will be here through the end of the regular season, so we got a few weeks left. As always, send those questions into mailbag@footballguys.com. Subscribe to the YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguystv. I'm Dave Kluge. I'm here with Victoria Geary and Chris Allen, and we will see you next week.